actually want to pick up where my colleague left off, because I also was concerned about potential for automatic voter registration in the future, because this year there were groups advocating that we do that. There's been colleagues of ours that have also been very vocal about the need for us to move in that direction of automatic voter registration. There was an article in February of this year in NPR that stated that in Pennsylvania there were non-citizens that were accidentally registered to vote, not due to automatic voter registration, but due more towards the driver's licenses being given to non-citizens. And so I just wanted is there nothing in this bill that actually would differentiate someone's license, a license for someone who is undocumented and someone who is a citizen, just for the matter of ensuring that there's no mix-up in records between the DMV and the Board of Elections in the future, should this state go forward with automatic voter registration?
So in a very technical sense, the answer is no. We don't address that because it's not a current concern. If we were to endeavor into drafting legislation to create that immediate registration, we would have to find a way around that concern and implement what would be automatic voter registration. But again, I think it's important to note nothing that we're doing here gives voting rights to anyone who is not currently eligible to vote, and that's only citizens. So we're not changing that. And so if we expand the process for registering someone, we would take into account what the DMV's database has or doesn't have and how it would meet or comply with whatever goals we would have in those election policy proposals.
And I understand that this legislation is not looking to give voting rights. However, the House of Representatives just passed legislation that would allow for automatic voter registration. So I mean, it would make sense that while we're crafting this bill, that we should be anticipating that automatic voter registration will be coming down the pike. I mean, what happens if we issue, let's say, 500,000 driver's licenses and learner's permits, and then later on down the line we see that automatic voter registration? How will you be able to differentiate at that point between those who are citizens eligible to vote and those who are non-citizens?
No, Nicole, I think it's important also to note that concern is actually already in place, whether or not we pass this. There are legal residents, non-citizens, who currently have driver's licenses, and they're in the database. And so if we did not pass this, but yet implemented automatic voter registration, that's a concern we would still have to take into account in terms of how we implement that new policy. But I'm sure there are a number of future policies that may or may not be impacted directly or indirectly by what we do here, but simply that does not change the fact that our state is better served, our economy and our public safety is better served by ensuring that more people are on the road, licensed and insured.
Okay. With regards to the individuals who qualify for a license, I mean, are we looking at all at if they have driven unlicensed, if they are convicted of driving while intoxicated or under the influence? Would that prevent anyone from being able to now apply for a license?
There's no database now for people getting licenses in regards to any prior history. So if it's, right, in the case of a foreign license. But look, if I understood the question correctly, no. The answer is no.
Okay. Moving to Section 2, Paragraph 12, where you discuss the requirement that the commissioner, no later than 3 days after such a request for information comes from an immigration agency, they have to notify the licensed individual about whom such information was requested, and that this agency has requested their documentation and background information. So I assume that's in there because you have an interest in protecting individuals who are here undocumented from deportation. Now, what if the situation was that an individual was here and they had committed a crime that may be protected under maybe sanctuary policy, or now law enforcement is forced to find that person on their own, and they're utilizing this database to do so. Can you just talk a little bit about that? Like, what is the purpose of putting in that protection there? If an individual, I mean, because clearly there's, well, why don't you talk a little bit about why you put that provision in there?
As I mentioned earlier this afternoon, the two reasons. Number one, we are consistent in terms of the privacy protections that we are looking to afford within the bill. And while we exempt a number of agencies or clarify the limited agencies that would not have direct access, there are a number of exemptions of those that do. This notification would only apply to those federal agencies that enforce civil immigration matters. And again, that's not the responsibility of the DMV, and when appropriate under the provisions that we would put forward, they would let that individual know that their information was requested. It is not that dissimilar from the existing provision in the Federal Driver Privacy Protection Act that talks about exempted access, and then states that if a non-exempted entity or agency were to request information, the driver would receive a notification that that information was requested pertaining to their records. So in a sense, we're remaining consistent with how the federal policy addresses notifications in some instances.
Okay, so but if an individual committed a crime and now there's a detainer request for this individual to be removed from the country, this would actually require the commissioner to notify the perpetrator that an agency, a law enforcement agency, is seeking them?
I'm a little confused about the question because we're only limiting the information when it's related to immigration specific.
Yes.
If there was a criminal act committed, an investigation pertaining to criminal acts,
yes,
that is not, in my opinion, being impacted, those investigations.
Well, what I'm saying is, if there is a detainer request for an individual who is committed a crime in the United States, and now the law enforcement is seeking to have them removed from the country permanently, my question would be, would this require the commissioner of the Department of Motor Vehicles to notify the licensed individual who is being sought that there is a law enforcement entity that is seeking them?
The notification would be that a request was made and for which documents, not the intent of that agency's, the reasons why they're requesting that information. Also, if, as was stated earlier, there are scenarios where certain federal warrants or court orders would still allow access to certain information, but I don't see how that scenario really plays out in practice.
Well, I think it's important because, first of all, you know, U.S. Code 1324 prohibits individuals from aiding and abetting individuals who are here unlawfully. And if you have a federal agency who has a detainer request for someone's removal, and you're directing now the commissioner or the individuals who report to the commissioner to now notify this individual that they're being sought by a law enforcement agency, you know, you're asking an employee of the DMV to commit a crime against U.S. Code 1324.
No,
I mean, I don't think we should be putting legislation forward.
We're not asking them to commit a crime. DMV's responsibilities pertain to the regulation of individuals within our state who can operate a motor vehicle, under what conditions or in what manner they can do so, ensuring that they are able to do so. And that's the responsibility of DMV. It is federal agencies' responsibility to go about their investigations, to detain individuals they're seeking. And I understand that underlying this question is this broader discussion around the role of local agencies or support for federal efforts in regards to immigration law. And yes, there'll be some of those points that we will simply not agree on, but I think that our efforts here speak more to public safety, for our roadways, for our local law enforcement, for road safety, for a number of local investigations, local interactions by police and individuals in our state, making sure that people are able to operate within our state, not having to live under the shadows. I think all of those things far outweigh public safety in a positive way than the DMV itself being one of the entities that would help facilitate or be involved in helping or assisting or providing information to immigration offices for their purposes. I could understand the philosophical difference we'll have on that, but I think there's a clear argument that there are much more public safety measures being achieved in this than not.
Okay. Look, obviously we're not going to agree on this particular point, and I do see some of the merit that you're saying this bill carries. But what I do want to go back into in the public safety aspect on a much more global scale. Have you had conversations with the New York State Association of County Clerks?
No.
Okay, so have they, I mean, because they publicly have said that they will have difficulty verifying whether these documents that are provided, that are foreign documents that they're not familiar with, are genuine and whether they're authentic or not.
I've heard those concerns. They have not reached out either to express those concerns to me and the sponsor. I've only heard their concerns through their press conferences and some editorials that they put out. But I can tell you, I don't see how that is in fact or in truth. The fact is, local DMV personnel as well as county clerk personnel that issue, and I believe they all do, the federal, standard licenses or the Real ID compliant licenses already have a method of training and a process to verify foreign documents. Yes, this will maybe add two other or one other really document that they would have to verify, but there are extensive technology, software, and other processes that are used widely in banking and other industries that do this. We are limiting it to those three and identifications, which are, you know, not easily accessible. Not everybody has one. They are coming from legitimate agencies, from countries that DMV has had an understanding of what the protocols are. So this, again, I strongly believe that based on the training that staff already gets, they are familiar with this process. They know what they're doing. Is it possible that they'll need a person or two extra, that they may need additional revenues? That's if for the technology, if software needs to be provided to them, that's something the department would have to adjust to. And I will argue that the revenues raised will more than enough cover those expenses, and local county clerks will see also tremendous financial benefits for their local jurisdictions through the implementation of this bill.
You know, I share concern that was brought up by one of my colleagues, and it is a very legitimate concern. And I believe that the majority of individuals who will be seeking these licenses are good people. They're here, they want to work hard, they want to achieve the American dream, like my parents, like your family. And I have, you know, I'm supportive of actually lobbying Washington so that way they can come out of the shadows and become productive members of our society. But there is really a security issue here as well. And you know, when you look at our history as a nation, you know, we have to be mindful of those who also want to do us harm. All right, and that is something I don't think that this bill takes into account. You know, there's one thing that we want to fight for those individuals who are here, they want to work hard, they want to achieve the American dream, but those that slip through the cracks, that are here to try to do us harm, I don't think this bill does enough. And the fact that the New York State Association of County Clerks is saying that they can't verify the authenticity of documents. I mean, they're saying it. I understand that you're saying that they have some tools to do so, but if the association itself is saying that they can't do it, I mean, isn't that something that concerns you in a post-9/11 world?
Certainly, and again, I think it's important. I don't want anybody in any district to misinterpret our efforts to ensure public safety. I think public safety is paramount in what we're trying to achieve here. And I understand that there will always be scenarios and you know, examples where something can slip through the cracks, as was mentioned earlier. But make no mistake about it, we are enhancing public safety through this process. Even, in fact, Ms. Malliotakis, and I look forward to the day that I can join you in that lobbying effort in DC for immigration reform in this country. But the fact is, if you look at the 9/11 terrorists, yeah. The fact that all of them had been issued licenses and pilot's licenses in some instances actually helped law enforcement to better investigate and more rapidly investigate where those individuals lived, who was associated with them,
trying to block
information
access
that
to that
today is oftentimes not accessible to law enforcement agencies because those individuals are forced to live in the shadows and don't share information where necessary. So I would argue we are making our public safety goals much clearer to achieve by improving the number of people that can, enhancing the number of people that can be a part of our licensing in our system, rather than the opposite, keeping the current structure makes us more dangerous in our communities.
All right, but you're not sharing, you're blocking those information from being shared.
Ms. Malliotakis, your time has elapsed.
It was up when you let him keep going.
Well, unfortunately, you asked him the question at the appropriate time.
Thank you.